Hello, U.S. history students. And this week we are beginning a new unit. It's a small unit dealing with imperialism. Okay, this is one of the big steps that is going to put the world on the path to World War One. Industrialization is the first, imperialism is the second. So in the next couple of days, we're going to be looking at how the U.S. is involved in imperialism, and then how imperialism contributes to the buildup that's going to lead to World War One. Now, today we're going to use the acronym CONTROL because imperialism is all about control. Now, before we get started, in terms of the United States prides itself on never having had an empire. Like Britain had an empire, France had an empire. Spain had an empire. Okay, there was the Ottoman Empire. So there are all these different empires out there, and that's where we get imperialism. The root word of imperialism, imperial, refers to empire. So the United States has prided itself on never having an empire, but at the same time, imperialism is all about control. And when we use that kind of as a starting point, then the United States has definitely been involved in imperialistic activities. We might not have had an empire, but we have done some pretty imperialistic things. And that's what we're going to look at today. All right. The first letter, C. Why do we get involved in imperialism even though we don't have an empire? It's because we want to cover the world with U.S. policy. Now, we're using the word control. That is a key component of imperialism. With imperialism, it's all about stronger nations extending control over weaker nations. So this cartoon here does a good job showing you what we're talking about. You got Uncle Sam there with his little American flags, popping them at certain places around the world. Okay. Now, once again, we're not saying we have an empire, but we definitely want to exert control over the world. Okay. And why do we want to do this? Well, there's three reasons. All right. Number one, we want more resources. We are a growing country. We are industrializing. We need more resources. Okay. So we want to get involved in these other areas. Number two, we want to spread our culture. We've talked about that. Immigrants come to this country looking for more freedom and better economic opportunity. We want to see that spread to other places as well. And then last but not least, we want to show our strength, okay? America is coming onto the world stage kind of late, all right? Britain has been there before, France has been there before, all your European countries. We want to prove that we have grown and that we can compete with the other nations of the world. Okay? So why do we get involved in this? We want resources, we want to spread our culture, and we want to show that we're strong. Now, how do we do this? What do we get involved in? All right. O, first O, stands for open door policy with China. Now, at one point in time, China was broken up into spheres of influence. And if you wanted to do business with China, you had to have a sphere of influence in China. Okay. That's where you went, your country went to trade. And nobody else could go there except for you. All right. Well, we want China as a market for our products. But China has kind of been carved up into spheres of influence before we get involved in there, okay? But we want to be able to sell our products in China. And to be honest with you, we would like Chinese products as well, okay? So what we propose to China is that we have open trading rights, okay? Let's cut out all these spheres of influence. Let's cut out these different port cities and stuff like that, and just open up China to everybody. Anybody that wants to trade with China should be able to trade with China. That's the open door policy. You can come in and out. Okay. So if you want to trade with China, you should be able to trade with China. That's what we are pushing for because we want a market for our products. And that's eventually what is going to happen. In N stands for No More Hawaii Monarch. Now, this is an interesting story, okay? We are interested in Hawaii because Hawaii has sugar. We pay a tax on imported sugar. It's a very expensive tax. And you know about us and taxes. We don't like paying taxes, okay? Hawaii was under the control of a royal family, okay? Queen Liliuokalani is the last queen of Hawaii. And we begin to realize that if Hawaii was part of our continent or our country, all right, if it was a territory or something, we wouldn't have to pay taxes because we would control Hawaii. So we start throwing out this idea, do you really want to live under a monarch? Is Queen Liliuokalani really taking care of you, Native Hawaiians? Or would you rather have something else? Would you rather have democracy? So we begin to sow these seeds and we support the Hawaiians when they eventually overthrow Queen Liliuokalani. Okay, now Queen, it's not like some of the other revolutions you've heard. She doesn't die or anything like that. She goes into exile, and we help overthrow the queen, and then we turn to Hawaii and we say, "You poor Hawaiians, you have nobody to lead you now, nobody to help govern you. So how about you become a territory of the United States, and we'll protect you?" And that's what happens in 1898. Hawaii will become a U.S. territory, and we will protect it. Since it is a U.S. territory, guess what? We don't have to pay that tax on sugar, okay? Because now we're not importing it. We're helping Hawaii out. Hawaii is our territory. So our interest in Hawaii starts over sugar. And of course, here's Hawaii. It's out there in the Pacific between the United States and Asia. Okay, so there's Hawaii in the Pacific. T. T stands for our good old friend Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt builds the Panama Canal. What we wanted is a quicker way to the Pacific. At one point in time, if you wanted to travel either way, if you wanted to come from the East Coast, you had to go all the way around South America up to the West Coast. And same, okay? If you want to go to the East Coast, you got to go all the way down around South America and this way. It would be much simpler if we could just cross the route, which is where the Panama Canal comes in, okay? Now, the Panama Canal, to be honest with you, we are not the first country to try to build a canal in Panama. I believe the French had tried. I believe the British had tried. But for various reasons, they'd given up, okay? Now, we end up helping the country of Panama revolt against Colombia. And when Panama gets its freedom from Colombia, we say, hey, how about you let us build a canal through your country? Okay, and it's going to cost us $380 million. Construction will start in August of 1904 when Teddy Roosevelt is president, and it will continue through August 1914 when Woodrow Wilson is president. But it starts with Teddy Roosevelt. It is built using a series of locks, okay? And this picture right here does a good job showing that, okay? You start here, all right? We're going to start from the Pacific Ocean side, all right? Let's say it's like steps, okay? You sail here. There's a barrier. The barrier is dropped, okay? Water flows in. It lifts your boat up. You sail here. Same thing. You get over there, and the reverse happens, okay? You drop the barrier. Water flows out, your boat drops to the next level, and you go down the steps on the other side. That's that lock method, okay? And this is very, very successful. It's going to cut down transportation time by several weeks, okay? I forget, we used to do an activity looking at how long it took to get from one side of the country to the other going around South America. And the Panama Canal is really, really going to cut down on that time period by several weeks. Okay, so this was a very, very good move on Roosevelt's part. And right now, Panama is actually in charge of the Panama Canal. We have deeded control back over to Panama. I'm pretty sure that's happened already. That's part of the deal too. We will help build the canal. We will control it. We will run it for several years, and then we will give it back over to the country of Panama. That was part of the deal with us being able to build there. All right. And there's Panama and the canal right there. All right, R. R stands for a revolution in Cuba leads to the Spanish-American War. Okay. Once again, it's all about sugar. All right. We imported a lot of sugar, and Cuba has sugar. Okay. Cuba was controlled by Spain. And we've talked about us exerting our policy in other places. We really like this idea of democracy. That's what we did with Hawaii. Like, do you guys really want to be controlled by a monarch in Hawaii? Well, it's the same thing in Cuba. Okay, it's controlled by Spain. All right, so we begin to float this idea out there in Cuba, like, hey, do you guys really want to be controlled by the Spanish, or would you like to be free? So Cuba revolts against their Spanish rulers, and we send ships to help. Okay, now what's interesting? Okay, now we specifically say our ships are going to come down to help protect the sugar plantations. We're not going to get involved. This is between you and Spain, but we're going to help send ships down to protect the sugar plantations. Okay, one of those ships was the USS Maine. All right. In April 1898, the Maine blows up. Okay. Probably some sort of boiler explosion, but the story that gets reported is that it was a Spanish torpedo. Okay, that Spain attacked the ship that was just down there providing protection for the farmers. We weren't there to get involved or anything like that, and Spain attacked us. And when that happens, we declare war on Spain. Okay, one of the big episodes of this war involves a charge up San Juan Hill by Teddy Roosevelt and his Rough Riders. Okay, Teddy Roosevelt. This is before he becomes president. He actually raised an army unit by himself, the Rough Riders. Interesting unit made up of a bunch of different types of people, and they are famous for charging up San Juan Hill to this victory in this battle during the Spanish-American War. Now, we will win the Spanish-American War. What's interesting is then we get involved in Cuba, and Cuba's like, wait a minute, we want to be independent. Like, we've traded one set of rulers, the Spanish, for another set of rulers, the Americans, and we don't like that. We don't want that. Okay, so we're going to hear more about this later in the history of this country. Also, what's interesting, okay, we talked about muckrakers. All right. One of the things muckrakers do bring problems to light, but a lot of times muckrakers engage in what we call yellow journalism, where they sensationalize stories, and that's exactly what happened in the Spanish-American War. We don't know what happened to the U.S. Maine. Chances are it probably was not a Spanish torpedo, but that's what the newspapers reported. Okay, so yellow journalism is exaggerating a story for sensation to gain sensational appeal. And a lot of that happened during the Spanish American War. Now, Spanish American War is going to lead to the second O in control. Oh, by the way, we added or annexed Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Guam. Okay, with our victory in the Spanish American War, we're going to gain a lot of territory. Spain is going to give us Puerto Rico and Guam at the end of the war. Then we are going to pay $20 million for the Philippines. Okay, and they are going to become U.S. territories as well. Every once in a while, you hear, especially Philippines and Puerto Rico, about maybe them becoming a state of the Union, maybe them becoming an official state. I don't think that will happen because they get all the benefits of being a state without actually having to join the United States. Okay, so they are still territories with the United States today. But all that comes because we won the Spanish-American War. Now, L stands for love the money. And the president that loves the money is Taft. When you want to engage in imperialism, there are a bunch of different ways you can do it. You can do it by force, okay? You can do it by being nice, or you can do it with money. Taft prefers dollars to bullets. If I can use money and invest it in other countries and give it to other countries and gain their loyalty by doing that, I would much rather do that than say go to war or just be nice. Okay. So he wants to spend a lot of money in Latin America. He wants to invest a lot of money in Latin America. Latin America, very, very impoverished. We're concerned about other influences in Latin America. So if we give all this money to Latin America, who's Latin America going to be loyal to? Us. Okay? This is what we call dollar diplomacy. This love of the money, let the money do the talking. We invest in these areas. We give these areas money to take care of their own needs, and then they become our friends. That's dollar diplomacy. Now, like I say, there are a bunch of other ways you can do this. Teddy Roosevelt was a big fan of big stick diplomacy. That's using the military. It comes from an African proverb, walk softly, but carry a big stick, okay? Which means strive for peace. But if you need to, whoop up on somebody, okay? And use your force to prove how strong you are. So Teddy Roosevelt, was a big believer in big stick diplomacy. I will use the military if I need to. Okay. Woodrow Wilson was a big believer in moral diplomacy. Okay. This is simply being nice. All right. Why should we get involved in these areas? It's because we're concerned about their well being, their welfare. We're concerned about human rights. All right. So we don't do it to gain any advantage for us. All right. We're just trying to be nice and help protect these areas. All right. So that's Wilson and moral diplomacy. Now, one other part of control that got left out of the acronym that I want to talk about real quick is the territory of Alaska. Okay. This goes all the way back to 1867. All right. Secretary of State William Seward is involved with this. Okay. We actually buy Alaska from Russia for $7.2 million. And like I said, Secretary of State William Seward, who was Secretary of State under Lincoln, he's the guy that brokers this deal. All right. Now, when it's first made public, nobody likes it. Alaska was a frozen wasteland. We're like, why did we do this? It was called Seward's Folly. It was called Seward's Icebox, because people are just like, this is ridiculous. Why are we buying this frozen wasteland up north that's really closer to Canada than it is us, and really closer to Russia? I mean, you remember Sarah Palin was like, I can see Russia from my house. Well, literally, here's Russia, there's Alaska. Okay. And there's the Bering Strait in between. You can see Russia from Alaska. Okay. So anyway, people were criticizing this deal. But over time, it becomes much more popular. For example, it doubles the size of the United States. There is a lot of land in Alaska. All right. Bigger than Texas and stuff like that. It doubles the size of the United States in 1867. Okay. It is rich in timber and other natural resources, including a product that is going to be very, very lucrative, oil. So not only does it double the size of the United States, but when we find out, oh my gosh, it's got all this timber and we can sell the timber, and it's got all this oil, that's awesome, and all these other natural resources that we can sell and we can utilize, people begin to rethink the purchase of Alaska. It's not that bad of a deal. Okay, now it's going to take time, but people begin to rethink that. And then last but not least, it expands our reach into the Pacific. And we are looking to exert our control and exert our influence in other parts of the world. And this is a great place to do that. Okay. So Alaska turns out to be a pretty good purchase in the end. Now, keep in mind, while we're doing all this, we are never once saying we have an empire. All right. And we're justifying it by, hey, we're giving this area a lot of money and we're really trying to help these people with their human rights. And we want these people to be free and stuff like that. So we're trying to use that to justify our imperialistic activities. Never once saying, hey, we're creating an empire. Now, in our next lesson, we're going to review this stuff, okay, and label these different spots on a map. Okay, so be sure you pay attention to that and use the map or use the notes that I've uploaded to Canvas. Okay, review this material. There's a little quiz coming up on this. We'll finish up imperialism and then we're going to head into World War I.